here, visionary, author, podcaster, and high-performance accelerator. So if you're the kind of person that says, I know that I'm capable of more, I'm destined for more in my personal growth, in my business career, in my corporate lifestyle, then we have someone here whose passion is consulting, coaching, training, advising in personal and professional and learning and development. His name is Mr. Joe A. Simmons. He's achieved an 85% employee retention rate, contributed to over $500 million in revenue growth, and he's doubled team performance through coaching, training, and strategic execution. So Joe has so much to tell us today about achieving our goals, branding, marketing, communication, so many cool ideas, so many things to talk about. So Joe, happy to speak to you.
Oh, Robert, thank you so much for the invitation. It's good to be here.
And it's good to have you. And so we introduced you a little bit, right? Hyped you up for our audience. But what are you all about from the source himself? What just gets you excited, jacked up, just jumping out of bed in the morning?
High performance. I love progress. I'm very passionate about progress, goal achievement, and just becoming our better selves. But more importantly, to be very succinct and to sum it up in a sentence, I strive for us as business professionals and as human beings to achieve more success with less stress.
I like that. It rhymes, it's catchy, because what's the point of having more in your life if you're just adding to the chaos, if you're just increasing your stress? And I imagine that maybe that holds people back, right? And they say, well, I like the kind of athlete analogy of training and of strengthening the muscle and of just getting better, and those things that were such a struggle for me to do 2 or 3 years ago, I could do them on my sleep now. And then in 2 or 3 years, imagine where I'm at. But then if people say, well, if I want to get to that next step in my career, if I want to grow that business or pursue this opportunity, there's that hesitation of, well, if I do, won't I just be increasing my problems? Won't I just be kind of adding to the stress? And so we don't want that, right? We don't want to hesitate. There's enough hesitation in the world. We want to be bold and take action. And so how do we do that? I mean, what causes stress and why don't people really go for it when we know they should?
I'm glad you asked that question. That's exactly what I was looking for. That's a great question. So, um, there are really like 10 major reasons why most goals go unfulfilled. The first one is entitlement. A lot of people think that just because they have a desire or maybe because they want something that they should get it, but you have to do more than that. Number two is impatience, right? Bill Gates has his famous quote where he says that we overestimate what we can do in 1 year and we underestimate what we can do in a decade. So a lot of people are impatient. If you look at the very successful people in the world, I mean, like China, for example, right? The reason why China has a lot of successful people is because they think in decades. They don't think in days. That's another Tony Robbins quote. That you want to condense decades into days, but when it comes to business, you want to think in decades, not days. Now, if you think in decades versus days or versus months, your strategy is going to be different. The moves that you're going to make going to be different. So they even asked Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, and he says that he takes after the Chinese philosophy that when he was creating Alibaba, it was how do I create Alibaba to last, for 100 years? And then the third one, like you talked about, which is stress management, right? Most people don't achieve their goals is because they stressed out. And there are 4 major stress triggers. There's overthinking, there's perfectionism, there's what I call destructive distractions, and then there's also eternal catalyst. So basically, your focus is off. That's the reason why a lot of people are stressed out. But when you really look at life, I've really condensed life into this one phrase. This is So if nobody gets nothing else from this interview, this is the one thing you definitely want to get. Because I was thinking about this recently, and I was like, what can you really like compress life into? And it's this: competency comes before compensation. I'll say that one more time. Competency comes before compensation. So, getting back to what you were saying about why people don't achieve their goals, it's because they're focused on the compensation, but they're not focused on the competency. If you focus on competency and not compensation, the compensation will come in alignment with the with the compensation. So also too, me talking about the entitlement. So I have a framework that I've also developed called the 6 degrees of ambition, right? So there's 6 levels. The first level is just where a lot of people are, which is idea. So they have an idea about something they want to change, or they have an idea about a goal. The second one is interest. So not only that you have an idea, so you taking that idea and now you have an interest in it. Then the third level is desire. So now it's more of a burning, it's more of a passion. But here's the problem: most goals do not get achieved on those first 3 ladders. You have to go deeper. So, number 4 is commitment. You have to actually be wanting to commit to something in order for you to have achievement. And then the next level is dedication. Dedication is saying that you're going to do it when you don't feel well. You're going to do it when you don't feel like it. You're just very focused and determined. And as long as you're still healthy and you have, breath in your lungs, you're going to give it a shot. And then the ultimate one is lifestyle. So it just becomes a part of your lifestyle. That is what you do. So everything becomes instinctual. And according to leadership expert and author of the 5 a.m. Club, Robin Sharma, after 66 days, we develop automaticity. So this is why habits also is so important. But when you start to compound, you'll develop these habits. So I hope that kind of answered your question.
It does. It gives us so much to think about. I feel like I need to pull out that clip that last 3 minutes and like transcribe it or listen to it again and again because there's so much good stuff in there. And for me, I'm picturing like a whole map of all these connected little dots because it all like you've broken down this huge problem we have into smaller pieces, but then it all sort of connects in all these different ways, right? Because there's basically this need to look at a larger picture and a longer timeline. And Joe, when I was younger, I used to think that a longer term plan meant taking your time more, and when it probably just means taking bigger action and taking more things more strategic and things that are more sustainable. And so, like you mentioned Jack Ma, and there's something he said that really impressed me when he said, like, when you're in your 20s do this, when you're in your 30s do this, and he laid out like decade by decade, like, well, first like work for someone, and then like in this other decade like build this other company. And I found that really helpful in the automaticity that you mentioned there. When you look at like there's all these tools available, right? There's so much information. There's like some calendar that you can print off that's basically like the rest of your life, right? It goes to like age 83, and you can see like every Sunday, every Wednesday, and and then you can fill in like how far you're in there so far, and it's a little bit depressing. But then it forces you to kind of look at things on a larger picture, right? Like, well, if I do this for 2 years or for 10 years, then that's kind of thinking more in terms of, okay, I'm not wandering through life anymore, right? And there's just so much of like the think and grow richness in what you mentioned there, that these ideas of like specialized knowledge. And if you when you get the competency first, and then that leads to better compensation because it's more specialized knowledge, you do this higher paid work for someone because you're generating more money for whoever you're working for. It's like a lot of these really big ideas, and like delayed gratification, where if you just want the quick fix, the quick reward now, well, then that won't lead to the bigger gains that come from learning a skill or building a business or like doing all these right things. And so you've given us just so much to think about as far as like working towards our goals and achieving our goals and kind of working towards things more strategically. But I want to definitely keep this kind of grounded and keep it about you. So like there's a lot of really cool concepts there, but as far as Mr. Joe A. Simmons and what you've achieved and what you've gone through, what you've struggled, do you have a fun story to share with us just about your roller coaster adventures?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So, yes, I shared all that stuff, and then yes, I would like to think that I just woke up one morning and I just snapped my fingers, and I just had all this success. But I struggled a lot, and I learned the importance of reading. I also learned the importance of what I call an accelerator, which in it I come to realize that there are four categories of accelerators. There's mentors, coaches, consultants, trainers, and advisors. So I'll say that again: mentors, coaches, consultants, trainers, and advisors. Basically, anybody that can help you accelerate to get your results faster. So either they have done it themselves or they know somebody who has done it that they can put you in contact with that person to help you. So getting back to my personal story, from 2010 to 2012, I suffered from a mild depression. So my accelerators were books, like taking long walks, books, finding coaches, YouTube, like a lot of personal development, like you talk about with Napoleon Hill, with Think and Grow Rich. But for me during that time, it was a very dark time in my life. And personal development and especially books is something that definitely helped me, renew my confidence for me to get back on the journey. And so I took all the lessons that I had learned prior in my career to when I transferred to my new career in financial services, which, like I said, personal development is such a huge unlock. And I'm very grateful for Andrew Carnegie for creating the whole library system, because he was like, we have so much knowledge and we want to pay it forward to the next generation. So, yes, I've had my personal struggle of suffering a mild depression, overcoming that. I've also had my struggles of learning how to communicate and to be more open when you're on a team, when you're collaborating and stuff like that, which led me to write my first book in 2019. I've also been able to become a full circle accelerator. So I've been a mentor, I've been a coach, I've been a consultant, I've been a trainer, I've been an advisor, and I'm very grateful for those experiences, because my main thing because my background is in financial services and a corporate trainer. So my main thing was that for my trainees, I always wanted to give them the blueprints and the guides that I didn't have, because most of the stuff that I learned, I had to learn from trial and error. So there's really three ways to learn: there's trial and error, there's research, and then there's accelerators. But a lot of the stuff that I learned when I was in corporate, prior to me becoming the number one producer, becoming the number one trainer, and also at a time being on the number one team in a whole multinational billion-dollar conglomerate, was that, hey, it's just not about me, it's about the team. Like I always say, I'd rather be on the championship Bulls. If you're a sports fan, everybody wants to be Michael Jordan, but it's the championship Bulls. Michael Jordan could win those championships by himself. So that's in life and in business, that life is really about relationships.
I agree completely, and it seems like you've come so far and figured out so much. And I mean, again, there's a lot of good stuff in there, but what sticks out for me are the three ways of learning. Right? You can do the trial and error method, which that seems like it's the riskiest, takes the most time, has the most chance of failure, and then option two is reading and learning, which that is important to have like the foundational knowledge, but still it only gets you so far. And then the third is actually applying it. And it seems like that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Because you can learn some foundational knowledge and figure out why you are the way you are. And if you're, say, you're going through depression, read some books on it, and then act based on that. And so that's very interesting to think about as far as just books. It's such a cliche and it's so simple, but books are so important. I mean, you think of like if someone out there, especially historically, like nowadays, sure, you can just upload a Word document, but if like Napoleon Hill or Andrew Carnegie or someone put out a book and it's lasted for decades, centuries, and it costs who knows how much money and 1910s money to go to the printing press and make all the copies, like a lot of work went into that, something that you just read a few pages on, and it's like that person immortalized in book form. And it's just, there's so much knowledge out there, and there's so many things I've looked back on, Joe, like as far as just my own like emotional intelligence or like business ideas or even like friendships, relationships, where like if only when I was like 12 years old, if I read a book on such and such topic, then it might have kind of shortcut some different things in life. And so what stood out for me here is that you mentioned about this whole idea of communication, which, like, again, having newer, more adult awareness, communication, like there's more to it than you think, right? Because you think, oh, communication, that's like how I say the words, but communication, a lot of it is asking questions and listening to yourself and the words that you put out and listening to others. And so what do you have to tell us about being a better communicator, and have there been any unexpected surprises in your journey of beefing up your communication skills?
Well, just like anything else, communication is a skill. And I still remember taking a communication class when I was in junior college. Professor Olson, great communicator as well, and he taught us a lot of tricks about communication. But one of the main things about communication is you want to have clarity, right? There needs to be clarity. There needs to be a clear message. Not only that, it also helps if you can build rapport with the person that you're trying to communicate with. Also, too, going back to what you said about emotional intelligence, as we all know, over 90% of communication is nonverbal. So a lot of communication is also listening, actively listening. I want to clarify that, actively listening, adjusting, and just also being present in the morning, in the moment. But one communication framework that I want to leave with you and the guest, part of the middle part of the book that I wrote in 2019 about how to make more money, but this also applies to just life in general. And I look at communication as there's like four pillars. There's brand in this order: branding, marketing, networking, and then advertising. So the reason why I put branding first is because we all have a personal brand, whether we know it or not. And the way we interact on a daily basis, even with our family, our friends, our colleagues, and our associates. So my opinion of branding is it's the ideals, it's the values, it's the standards, it's your essence. It's like, who are you as a person, and how do you want to communicate that brand to others? But it's mainly values. That's really what branding is all about. Is what are your values? Marketing is basically the promotion of that brand or of those values. Because, and the reason why I put branding before marketing, I know everybody talks about marketing, or sales, but if you built a brand that people know, it makes it easier for your marketing message to get out there. Versus if you go to a networking event and you haven't built a brand and nobody knows who you are, and the first thing you try to do is you try to market a product or a service, it's like, who is this guy? Who is this woman? So, and So they're going to be trying to be figure out what is your brand, what is your identity, what are your values. Then then also too, for you to market, you need to have a brand in order to market. So marketing is just the promotion of that brand. Then the network. When you're engaging and getting to know new people, it makes it easier to do business. Think about it. The biggest brands in the world do business with each other. So they're able to identify, okay, you're a brand, I'm a brand. I know what your values are, I know what my values are. Let's see if we can have some continuity where to see if the business makes sense. And that also happens on a personal level too, with your friends that you have like interest in. And then advertising. It makes it easier for you to advertise or somebody to advertise on top of you. For you. So let's say, for example, if we wanted to launch a product to the marketplace, if we have a good brand, if we have good marketing, we have a network that can help us advertise, and then we do our own advertising, we have a higher probability of that product launch being very successful versus what a lot of people try to do. Oh, I had this product. Let me just go straight and try to advertise it. But you haven't built a brand, you haven't had marketing, and you don't have a network to help you. So those are the four pillars when I think about taking communication to the next level.
And that's an amazing concept, these four pillars, because this way we can apply kind of these different techniques all working at the same time. And I love your take on branding, because it's so easy to fall into the business speak with branding, isn't it? It's easy to say, oh, well, have these colors and have this font. And they think, well, how does that really help my business? How does that make me more money? But when you're saying, okay, well, this idea of branding, it's to kind of choose and express what your values are. That way, someone that you're marketing to does not have to figure it out for themselves. You've already decided, it's already clear, you've done the repetition. So that way, when you go and you meet someone and you figure out, like at a networking event or something, then it's already pretty clear what it is that you're all about, what your values are. They don't have to do the work. And then it's all about relationships, you're saying. And again, relationships, it's easy to fall back on the cliche and say, oh yeah, I've heard of that, and give it lip service. But when you really think about what a relationship is, what relations are, it's when you have more than one person working together, right? You have two people working together. You and me are on a podcast. You watch a commercial on TV. It's not just about the brand. There's like an actor, there's some celebrity talking about it. You watch a talk show and some movie stars on it, right? So all over the place, there are these different people kind of overlapping their brands and helping each other out and multiplying. And it's all wonderful to think about, right? Just in all these ways of thinking outside the box and applying some finesse, and even and just a lot of it is taking these cliches that we've heard but maybe not been paying proper attention to, like even that thing that you said about the 90+% of communication is nonverbal. We've all heard that, but do we really understand what that means, right? We think, oh, does that mean body language or pauses? But you're saying like this whole idea of rapport, of like being strategic and saying, well, what does your audience want? What are their fears and frustrations? How well do you know them? Are you speaking to what they want? Like there's just some outside the box thinking that is maybe needed for a lot of people, especially business owners, entrepreneurs, who have just not been putting in this deep thought that you have. And so where do you come in, as far as if someone out there says, man, this guy Joe Simmons, he has all this wonderful advice and he's really kind of opened my eyes to what's possible and what maybe I could be doing better, but then how do you relate towards solving our problems? Is there like a product or service that you provide that we can find out more about, besides the book, of course?
Well, yeah, there's a coaching program. I do coaching, I do consulting. That's what I currently have right now. Just coaching and consulting. So yeah, I can be reached on social media or even through email. But yeah, that'll be the best way to get in contact with me. But my main thing is reciprocity, right? That's really what life is all about. it's really all about reciprocity. Let's go back to business for a minute, right? Business, I love, T. Harv Eker, the author of the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, he says that business is just, you just solve problems for profit. So there's really only three ways that businesses make money. You have to solve for a problem, a want, or a need. I'll say that again. You have to solve a problem, a want, or a need, right? Your electricity company, they're solving a problem that you have regarding electricity. So this is where the reciprocity comes in at. They provide you with electricity, you provide them with a monthly payment. Insurance companies do the same thing, whether that's health insurance, life insurance, whatever it may be. Okay, if you provide us with a monthly premium, then we'll provide access to a group of doctors where you can get medical care. And then when when the doctor submits the claim to the insurance company, they'll pay the claim based on the premiums that you sent in. Same thing with a want. You want a car, you want to be able to travel, even if you want to take a plane. Let's say, for example, you want to go from here to, you know, California, right? Let's say you want to go from here. I'm in Florida. So if I want to go from Florida to California, which I've been to San Diego, which is great. So shout out to all the people in San Diego. But if I wanted to go from here to Los Angeles and I wanted to arrive at LAX, right? Whatever airline carrier that I select, I'm going to give them money so that they can transport me to California. So it's going to be a win-win. I get to go to California, they get money for their bottom line, and they get to continue their business operations.
That's deep, and that's interesting to think about. That it's all about like the reciprocity and the trade, and not necessarily an even trade, but a trade where I get more from what I receive than what I pay, but then the recipient also, according to their own goals, also profits in a way as well, because we have different goals and we also benefit, we also multiply from both sides of the equation. And so I love your simplicity and your kind of giving us some new awareness to these things that happen all around us, right? Because like marketing and sales and advertising and everything else and networking all happens around us, but it helps to say, well, why is that the way that it is, and what's working, and what can I further do for myself in my own personal development and my own business to really make the best use of that. And so Joe A. Simmons, you mentioned the book. So what's the book called? And you also mentioned social media and email. So what are those details as well?
Okay, yeah. So the book is called Mad Money: 12 Foundational Principles to Make More Money in Half the Time Without the Stress. So I'll give a quick 2-second intro or what the book is about. So like I said before, I suffered a mild depression from 2010 to 2012. I met an individual named Mark who was me 2 years into the future. So when I met Mark at this financial services company, he was standing outside of the company that I wanted to work for. And I saw myself in him because I was him 2 years prior when I was suffering from a mild depression and I was trying to get back into the workforce. So I saw Mark in me. Then on top of that, when I was in corporate, my colleagues used to always ask the question, how do you make more money? So I started thinking about it. I'm like, there has to be a formula, there has to be some type of uh, framework in order for you to make more money and have the time or have the stress. I'm like, there's obviously something that millionaires and billionaires are doing that obviously I'm and that average person is not doing. So I had a dream and it was like divine intervention, and these 12 steps showed up as like a framework. So at first I thought I was just, dreaming and just some hokey pokey stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stress test this. I'm going to go to the Fortune 500 and I'm going to go to the top billionaires. If they do these 12 things, I'll write this book. So I looked at Jeff Bezos. I looked at Elon Musk. I looked at Warren Buffett. I looked at Steve Jobs, like all of the billionaire CEOs. I looked at all of them and I started realizing this is things that they actually do. So I wrote the book in order to give people a foundation on how to actually, make more money and half the time or half the stress. But to fast forward it to 2024, it could all be summarized as I said before. Competency comes before compensation. And I also want people to think that when I say compensation, I'm not just talking about money. Compensation can be a relationship, it could be your health, it could be your wealth, it could be your relationships, it could be anything that you want to achieve. So when I say compensation, I mean like totality, like comprehensive. So these same principles can apply to almost every area of your life, not just, making money. So as far as social media, you can find me on LinkedIn, Joe A. Simmons. And then as far as email is concerned, you can find me at 5paradigms@gmail.com. And that's a play on a media company that I'm building called Paradigms and Perspectives. Hence, that leads to the podcast of the Paradigms and Perspectives podcast, which we're on all major platforms. We're on Apple and Spotify, Google. So all of the major platforms, you can go check us out at the Paradigms and Perspectives podcast.
Fantastic. Paradigms and Perspectives podcast, and then 5paradigms@gmail.com. Is that number 5 or 5 spelled out?
5 spelled out.
Okay, I'm glad I asked then. 5paradigms@gmail.com. And then the book is called Mad Money. And as you know, Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues. And that's not just a saying, it's that all these people have left all this evidence, all these breadcrumbs. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, you can look at all of their achievements and say, hey, well, what are the factors? What are the attributes? What can I do? And say, well, what did they stay away from and what did they do? So that way I can apply to myself. The knowledge is there, but it's just up to us to apply that. So go right now and check out the Paradigms and Perspective podcast and Joe A. Simmons on the social media platforms. As we sign off here, Joe, do you have any final parting words of advice? Does a helpful quote, I mean, we've mentioned so many quote or lessons, but does a quote or lesson in particular jump to mind as far as wrapping up our conversation?
Absolutely. And I'll end with the legend Tony Robbins. And Tony has helped me a lot, especially on my personal journey. And this is one of my favorite Tony Robbins quotes, where he says, people are rewarded in public for what they practice in private. I'll say it again. People are rewarded in public for what they practice in private. So going back to my whole competency comes before compensation, we idolize and we see all these successful people, but we're not understanding that it's what they do in private that allows for them to be rewarded in public. So I'll end with this. This is my remix. This is what I took from the Tony Robbins quote. If you work hard in private, you will be rewarded in public. But if you're lazy or not disciplined in private, you will be exposed in public.
Very powerful, amazing, and inspiring. Joe Simmons, visionary, author, podcaster, high performance accelerator. Wonderful speaking with you, friend.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you and your audience.
Super great.